If you know your relationship is toxic and you can't get yourself physically to leave, you aren't weak, you're trauma bonded. In this video, I'm showing you why abusers create trauma bonds, and I'm going to give you a 5-step system to help you break down that bond and reclaim your life. My ex-husband used to shower me with love and apologies after we get in a fight, only to return to being critical and cold shortly after. And I always wished that he would stay the person that he was in those good moments. But I started to feel trapped, almost as if it was like an addiction. Did you know that trauma bonds are as powerful as addiction? Research shows that the neurochemical pathways that are made in our brain as a result of trauma bonding are similar to those of drug addiction, making them incredibly difficult to break. Trauma bonding is a survival response, not a weakness. It's a psychological attachment formed through a repetitive cycle of abuse and positive reinforcement, leading to a strong emotional bond with the abuser. This cycle involves intense highs and lows, confusing the victim and creating a dependence on the abuser for validation and safety. My ex-husband and I would often fight, and of course during these fights he would emotionally and verbally abuse me. And then after those fights, often he would kind of retreat, and I would say ignore me for a couple of days. Sometimes even longer. And then after that, he would be very apologetic and affectionate and loving. And this was kind of the cycle that I got caught up in and was waiting for him to kind of return to that loving, warm personality. I just recently did a video that goes into a deeper level explanation about trauma bonding, and specifically the physiological aspects of our brain that really kind of cements this addiction. And I'm going to link that in the description. Hi, I'm Kristen. Years ago, I left a toxic marriage, and it took me getting out of that marriage to realize that I was repeating the cycles of emotional and abuse and neglect from my childhood in that marriage. And after that, leaving that marriage, I ended up with anxiety, depression, PTSD, an anxious attachment style, and codependence. And now I've largely healed from all of these things. And now I'm combining my personal experience with over 30 years of professional experience as a registered nurse and nurse educator to teach you the things that I've learned to help you heal too. If you're a survivor of emotional abuse and neglect or toxic relationships, you likely have a lot of healing to do. And I've created a mental health resource guide that contains information about all of the things that I've done over the past several years to heal myself. And I want to share that information with you. So there's a link in the description, and if you click it, I will send it to you for free. So why do narcissists create trauma bonds? They do it to maintain control. This cycle of abuse and affection keeps the victim off balance, which makes them easier to control. It starts eroding at their self-esteem. And then that makes the victim look towards the narcissist for validation and to lift their self-esteem, and they become dependent on the narcissist for this. My ex-husband used to criticize me quite a bit about my looks, my physical, my body and my weight and things like that. And he would kind of wrap it up in the package of humor and making jokes about it. But I really know, and I used to laugh at it actually. But now in retrospect, I realized that he was doing it to control me. The second reason is that they do it to ensure supply. So by controlling the other person, by making the other person dependent on them emotionally, then they constantly have someone that they have the ability to manipulate and control. And this makes them feel powerful, and this fulfills their self-esteem. By criticizing me, my ex-partner would basically create the situation where I didn't feel worthy of, I didn't feel good enough for anyone else to want to be with me, so that it kept me wanting to stay with him. And that was one of the ways that he ensured his supply. He cemented my being there to kind of feed his ego. And third, they do it to isolate the victim. Being in a situation, of abuse like this makes it more likely that you're going to want to just stay away from other people because you don't want them to witness it. You don't want them to, we don't ever want to make other people feel uncomfortable. And so we end up isolating. And this is really kind of done with intention because that allows the narcissist to control us even more. And if we're isolated, we're far less likely to reach out for help when we need it.
My ex-husband was a real charmer, and so it really came as a big surprise to my family when I left him. But he did make it difficult for me to spend time with my family. He didn't really want to spend time with my family, and he would always put up barriers if it was time to go visit them or something, because he didn't like participating in it. If you have a narcissist that is working so hard to control you and isolate you, what are you going to do to break free? Before I go into the 5 steps that you can use to break free, I want to just emphasize that your safety comes first. So depending on your situation, if you feel that you might be at risk or in any sort of danger, I'm giving you information about the National Domestic Abuse Hotline. And it's really important that you reach out to them if you're feeling like you're not safe. I did this before I left my husband, and it gave me so many great ideas about how to ensure my safety and what to do next. And so I recommend that you reach out and use this information if you at all feel unsafe. Step number 1 is acknowledging the bond. And that's just noticing it, acknowledging it to yourself, admitting it to yourself. Journaling about this can be really helpful, because really seeing it wholeheartedly and recognizing that it's happening and admitting it is the first step to be able to change it. This next one really depends on your situation, but if you have the ability to either go no contact or low contact or limit contact with the narcissist, that will really help kind of create some separation. And again, you have to do this within your ability to maintain your safety. If you're not living with the narcissist, you might have the ability to go no contact. If you're still living with the narcissist, you may have to go more with a modified contact plan where you're, limiting conversations to things that are absolutely necessary and limiting engaging in conflict and fights and things like that. One of the ways that you can minimize contact or reduce contact is by doing gray rocking. And this means basically keeping all of your communication with the narcissist very neutral, very businesslike, not emotional, basically being kind of rather uninteresting. The next step is to rebuild your identity. Start doing things for yourself. Connect with friends, explore hobbies, do self-care rituals, any sort of things that you can do to get back in touch with yourself. The next step is to seek support. This can be through individual therapy. This might be spending more time with friends, or there are also support groups available for survivors of narcissistic abuse, and I'm going to be linking those in the description. And the last step is to practice self-compassion. It's really important that you are super gentle on yourself while you're going through a time like this, because you've been taken down and abused and criticized by the narcissist. It's going to take you a while to rebuild that self-esteem, and you need to be really gentle with yourself through this, because healing is not a linear process. I think we always we want healing to be kind of a straight line that goes up, and it's really much more of a jagged line. We might be making some progress and then we fall down, and then we make a little bit more progress and we fall back down. So healing is definitely not linear, and you want to be very gentle on yourself and loving to yourself through this process. During my marriage, I had a couple of really close friends that I was very honest about the abuse that I was going through. And this really helped me because it gave me an opportunity to talk to some really close people about the abuse, and going through this process and these kind of 5 steps of, starting with acknowledging the abuse and going through the other steps that I told you about. It took me a long time. It took me probably a couple of years before I left my marriage to kind of work up the strength to do that. But you have to start somewhere. And so starting with, these steps and acknowledging it, starting to talk to some people about it, potentially making a plan, ensuring your safety, all of those things give you the ability and the strength that you need when you are finally ready to make a change. I just recently did a video series where I go into deeper level detail about all of the things that I did to fully separate from my ex-husband. And I'm linking that up above here, and you should go check that out if you're interested. Thanks.